I thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Scharf, thank you for joining us today and to update this committee on your progress as the brand new CEO of Wells Fargo.
Great.
Placing one's money and wealth in the custody of an organization like Wells Fargo is one of the biggest displays of trust, and for many years consumers were betrayed and taken advantage of in order to meet sales performance goals and ultimately to improve earnings and share prices. That was categorically wrong. Not only did Wells Fargo and its employees fail these customers, some of whom are my constituents in Missouri's 2nd Congressional District, but our regulators failed as well. They neither identified nor prevented this malpractice from occurring in the first place. It was the Obama administration's OCC and CFPB that first uncovered this problem, but it was not, I should say, the OCC and the CFPB of the previous administration that first uncovered this problem. It was, in fact, the LA Times, the media, that first brought your company's practices to light. Mr. Scharf, your predecessors appeared before this committee and assured members that Wells Fargo was on track to complying with financial regulators' consent orders. The evidence outlined in the third report produced by committee's Republicans regarding Wells Fargo says otherwise. Your predecessor was overly optimistic about the bank's progress towards complying with the CFPB and OCC consent orders and the Federal Reserve Board's asset cap. His public statements assuring the bank's progress to achieving compliance did not match up with what was taking place behind the scenes. Mr. Scharf, I am cautiously optimistic that you are the right man for the job to bring the bank into compliance and put these scandals to rest. What makes you different from your predecessors to adequately address and resolve these deep-seated issues within Wells Fargo?
Thank you, Congresswoman. First of all, I've been lucky enough through my career to have a series of experiences at companies that have been both well-run and troubled. And coming out of those experiences, I believe that there are a series of things that I've learned that could be very applicable here. The things that I've done since I've come to Wells Fargo, I think, are in stark contrast to how we've approached some of these issues in the past. I think if you're inside the company, you feel like we're approaching these issues very, very differently. I've been very, very open and honest about our lack of progress, not pointing out the positives, but both being realistic, but also focusing on the negatives because that's where we can have an impact. I believe the sense of urgency that people are working with inside the company is very different today than it was 4 months ago. I personally am spending the majority of my time on these issues, easily 75 to 80% of my time, not focused on growth, new businesses, anything like that.
Excuse me, Mr. Scharf, I'm not hearing any specifics here. What other changes are you going to implement? Wells Fargo's fragmented structure proved to be one of the root causes, I think, of the bank's ongoing compliance challenges. Can we expect to see additional changes to address major outstanding issues? Some specifics, please.
Absolutely. We're going to have a much stronger centralized core in everything that relates to risk and control. We're going to run the company as if it's one company with a consistent set of standards, a consistent set of policies. Everyone understands that, and we're going to have people in place that believe that that's the best way to run the company.
The committee's report found that Wells Fargo routinely requests extensions to deadlines for submitting remediation and reform plans. Regulators typically grant those requests, but the bank's plans remain insufficient, even with the extra time. Mr. Scharf, what steps are you taking to ensure Wells Fargo can submit these plans on time without deadline extensions? And are you still using these consultant contractors to draft plans to the CFPB and the OCC under the consent orders?
In addition to the things I just mentioned, Congresswoman, we're putting a substantially different group of people in charge of these issues. I personally and the operating committee are getting deeply involved in all of this. It's going to take time because, as you know, there are a series of orders that are outstanding, but we're trying to be as methodical as we can, going through piece by piece and managing it in a very different way, in a very tight way, just like you would manage any significant project in an institution like Wells Fargo.
I yield back.